Aw, gee, would you? That'd be just peachy, prick.
Hey guys, Terry here for Red3 Games, and today I'm going to be talking about Remember Me, which is a game that I have been looking forward to for so long. If you're not familiar with this game, it is a third-person action-adventure with sort of beat-em-up tendencies and also a whole cyberpunk theme overlaid. So it's very unique and interesting sounding, but is it good? Let's find out. Remember Me follows the story of Neelan, an elite memory hunter on a search to reclaim her stolen identity. In a futuristic Neo-Paris governed by megacorporations, a company called Memrise has developed a brain implant allowing anyone to delete or upload their memories to the net. Of course, with power comes corruption, and sure enough, Neelan begins to unravel the company's disturbing ulterior motives. The story focuses on her struggle to take down Memrise while piecing together the memories of her own forgotten life. It's a lot like Memento, but in the future, and with slightly more ass-kicking. It's a fascinating premise, and one I'd love to see explored in more games. Unfortunately, in the case of Remember Me, there's just not enough steam to keep it going for 10 hours. The first few chapters of the story are gripping and intense, but somewhere down the line it takes one too many odd turns. And by the time it's over, you'll be so sick of cheesy quips and poorly delivered lines, you likely won't even care what happens.
Hello, Neelan. Let's play a little game of you turn yourself in, but I shoot you anyway.
There are some notable exceptions, of course, like Keziah Burrows, who does an amazing job as the voice of Neelan. Her introspectives between chapters are some of the most interesting scenes in the game, but beyond that, there's really no performances to write home about.
Eating my past to create a better future. I'm tired of running.
As a memory hunter, Neelan has the unique ability to alter minds, forcing people to remember things that never actually happened. This is a key gameplay element, and one I was hoping would be slightly more fleshed out. There are only 4 of these sequences in the whole game, and each one seems to be more trial and error than actual puzzle solving. What little strategy is there is attenuated by the pain of having to rotate an analog stick 40 times in a row just to rewind a clip. Awful controls aren't just limited to these sections either. For a game with such a strong emphasis on platforming, it's difficult for Neelan to even turn around, much less climb giant buildings. The world of Neo-Paris is beautifully detailed, but it's also so linear that there's almost no room to explore off the beaten path. The platforming suffers because of this, and from a lack of guidance, which can often lead to your inadvertent death. The rare platforming sections that do shine are the ones that incorporate puzzles into them, ironically providing way more of a challenge than any of the game's memory remixes.
Just stay out of the light, Neelan. Damn thing is sniffing for my memories.
Of all the things in Remember Me, and there are many, I predict the combat is probably going to be the most divisive feature. In fact, there's a really good chance you won't even fully grasp it until the very end of the game. At the risk of absurdly oversimplifying, you string together pressons, which are fighting moves with specific functions, and time them out to create combo chains. How and where you distribute them in your combos will determine their effectiveness. Seems simple enough, right? Well, there's also these things called S-pressons, which are ultra-powerful abilities like throwing out a bomb or going invisible, with cooldown times that lessen when you deal or take damage. These are absolutely essential to surviving, especially later on when enemies start to adopt certain idiosyncrasies. It's a unique system overall, and in some ways it does work very well. Unfortunately, the majority of it is bogged down by convoluted restrictions. For starters, the game only has 4 combo moves, all of which are predetermined sequences comprised of the same 2 button presses. The placement of pressons within a combo also determines its effectiveness, meaning a presson at the end of a chain is much more powerful than one at the beginning. This leaves a good amount of room for experimentation, but it also adds a very micromanagement feel to the game that I suspect may turn some people off. Even with an obsessive knowledge of the combat system, it's still incredibly difficult to pull off larger combos. The margin of error for correctly timing moves is so small, and Neelan is so outnumbered that unless you can manage to pull an enemy away from the group, you'll be lucky to get more than 2 or 3 hits in. This is made more difficult by the constant need to dodge immediately after a prompt appears, which happens about every second or so. If you do get hit or accidentally hit someone else instead, the combo is broken and you have to start again. It's insanely hectic, and while there's nothing intrinsically unfair about that, there are times when you simply can't avoid being hit. For a game that already demands a tremendous amount of skill from its players, this just strikes me as a cheap shot.
There's a big bad hungry wolf. Hunting in the woodies.
When all is said and done, Remember Me is a game that gets crushed under the weight of its own ideas. It gleefully punishes players for even the simplest errors, destroying immersion and obliterating any lasting investment in its story. More than that, it simply can't decide what it wants to be. It pulls itself in so many different directions, failing to fully develop any one of them, and instead favoring mechanics that feel woefully out of place and actively trivialize other parts of the game. Remember Me is an exercise in frustration, and one that sadly can't be saved from mediocrity. I give it a 3 out of 5. So yeah, I guess there's really not a whole lot worth remembering about this game. I'm sorry, I had to do that. Yeah, I sort of had my ups and downs here. If you think this game looks interesting, there is a good chance that you might actually be into the combat. It seems, like I said, very divisive. I will say that this is the first game from the developers Don't Nod Entertainment, and I think for such an ambitious project, they pulled it off relatively well. It's certainly not perfect, but I would love to see more from these guys in the future. So that is it for me. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.